Round 9 of the 2016 TW Steel Daytona DMAX Championship here at Tamworth. It's the heavy heats that are up next on track, and it was Chris Carter who looked unstoppable during qualifying at Wilson Mill last time out. He took victory in Heats 1 and Heat 3, with Thomas Zaustovich fighting back in Heat 2 and in the final as well, meaning effectively it was a two-horse race all weekend. Now here for round 9 at Tamworth, it's set to be a very interesting race because Vinod Hirani has shown some signs of pace as well as Tom Pugh. So let's head over and see how they all got on. With the heavy heats, of course, here at the Daytona Tamworth circuit. Very, very interesting, of course. And it was Thomas Zaustovich who took 3 victories in 3 races. He absolutely dominated proceedings and, of course, starts from pole position for this race with the very, very impressive Lee Whitney running up alongside him. Keep an eye out for Chris Munro, who's also on the second row of the grid. He starts alongside Sam Harris. Now, Sam has looked very, very racy so far this weekend, but Thomas Zaustovich has just been unstoppable. He's been half a second or so a lap quicker than his nearest rivals. Will that prove to be the case here this afternoon for the final of the heavy heats here at the Daytona Tamworth circuit? They round the final corner now. They all line up in formation on the left-hand side of your screen. It is going to be Thomas Zaustovich. On the right-hand side is Lee Whitney. Lights out the way we go for the final. It's going to be Thomas Zaustovich who leads the way into the first corner. Second place is going to go the way of Lee Whitney. He halted around the outside ahead of Sam Harris, and Chris Munro has to settle back for 4th position so far. Keep an eye out also for Blaise Cianco as well, who's a bit in amongst the mix as well. He is just behind the likes of Chris Peabody at the moment as well. Everybody making it very cleanly through on that opening lap, but Lee Whitney, what a good start he's made in P2, but not as good as Thomas Zaustovich. Thomas Zaustovich in the lead of this race in the whole shot. Second place is Lee Whitney, third place is Sam Harris, but all the drivers making it very, very cleanly through. And of course, don't forget about the 4th place man of Chris Munro as well. He's also competing in the super heavy category as they go into the turn 9 and then turn 10 hairpin complex. No way through for any of the drivers there, but Lee Whitney's going to surely think about a move on Thomas Zaustovich before too long. Meanwhile, Chris Munro also trying to think about lining up a move on Sam Harris as well. Into the final corner these drivers go. Absolutely wonderful to see such fantastic overtaking action through the first corner. And across the timing line they go. Still going to be Thomas Zaustovich who takes the fastest lap last time around. Chris Munro holding on to 4th place. Chris Peabody in 5th place, also coming under pressure from Blaise Cianco as well. Cianco looking to try and find a way past Peabody as well. That's for P5 in this race. Meanwhile, P3 under grabs as well because Chris Munro is up the inside of the cart of Sam Harris. Sam Harris moves out of the way, gets himself back up into contention once again. So the top 2 really have broken away with Thomas Zaustovich and Lee Whitney, but Zaustovich's pace has been over 0.6 of a second quicker on that last lap in comparison to Lee Whitney, which is very, very impressive. Then comes the 3rd place man of Chris Munro, and then it is Sam Harris. Sam Harris looking to try and find a way through against Chris Munro into the final sector on this lap, and then there's the dueling pair of Chris Peabody and Blaise Cianco onto the final corner they go. Brilliant to see, and such fantastic racing action. But Zaustovich once again with the fastest lap, just under 1/10 of a second quicker than Lee Whitney in P2. Everybody making a great start there. Keep an eye out also for Chris Munro and Sam Harris in P3 and P4. They've had a bit of a good squabble all day long, but it's the battle for P5 that I'm interested in between Chris Peabody and Blaise Cianco. Cianco with the onboard camera, so we'll cross on board with him and get a good onboard shot with him. Into the intersection of the lap, the middle section of the lap they go, and Blaise Cianco looking brilliantly good out there on track. He's driving superbly at the moment, trying to find a way past Chris Peabody, but he's just got no answer to him at all at the moment. And meanwhile, out in front of the lead of this race, Thomas Zaustovich leading the way beautifully ahead of Lee Whitney. He's commanding this race, he's commanded it all weekend. He's taken 3 victories in the 3 heats that we've had so far here this afternoon at the Daytona Tamworth circuit. He's looking to take it 4 out of 4 for Thomas Zaustovich, which would be very, very impressive indeed. Lee Whitney also holding on beautifully as well in P2, and Chris Munro, keep an eye out for him in P3 because he's having to defend very nicely from Sam Harris into the turn 3, the right-hander, the sweeping right-hand bend they go, and then downhill into turn 4. No way through for Sam Harris at the moment. Meanwhile, Cianco coming under, making some more pressure on the likes of Pebbody. Pebbody in P5, Cianco in P6. Into the infield section they go on the circuit through the sweeping S's, but no way through for Cianco at the moment. He tries to think about a move up the inside into the right-hander, but no way through for him there at all, I'm afraid to say. A real disappointment for Cianco. He'll have to think about trying to find out where he's stronger. Sit behind Pebbody for a couple of laps and just assess his weaknesses and his strengths. Look at where he can take the advantage through. Meanwhile, Munro in P3 with Sam Harris close to company behind as well. Into the final couple of corners they go as the leading duo of Thomas Zaustovich and Lee Whitney come across the timing line and through turn 1 already. Then it is Chris Munro in the super heavy class, of course, so if he finishes as it is, he will be the victor in the super heavy class. The only other driver competing in the super heavy category is Richard Newton, who is down in P8 so far in this race. We were expected to have Chris Carter on the grid, but he is not racing here for the final this afternoon, which is a bit of a shame. Disappointed to not have Chris here, but nonetheless, things did not go his way in the third heat, unfortunately, because he ended up being black flagged with a 0 points score due to running off the track and making an overtake, which was deemed an illegal move. So therefore, he was black flagged, came into pit road and scored 0 points during that race. Lee Whitney lining up a move to try and get himself ahead of Zaustovich. He set the fastest lap time last time around, a 57.1 it was for Lee Whitney, a 57.4 it was for Zaustovich last time around, and he's really closed up that gap as well. Meanwhile, speaking of gap, there is no gap for the third place between Chris Munro in the super heavy class and Sam Harris. Try and find a way through between those two, so there's some great little battles going on, but Lee Whitney just doesn't seem to have an answer to Thomas Zaustovich when he gets onto the straights. Meanwhile, somebody who does have an answer is Sam Harris against Chris Munro for fourth place. This is going down the hill into the right-hander of turn 4. No way through for either of those drivers there at all, unfortunately. Everybody making it very, very cleanly through, though. But nonetheless, Sam Harris is looking beautiful out there on track at the moment. Meanwhile, Chris Pebbody still defending from Cianco. That's for 6th place. Sorry, for 5th place, I should say. Chris Pebbody in P5 and Blake Cianco in position number 6 at the moment. The drivers doing a great job. They're out on track, but Lee Whitney and Thomas Zaustovich have absolutely romped away out in front. Zaustovich still leading the way from Lee Whitney. But it's just a matter of time, I feel, before Lee Whitney thinks about launching a move. Meanwhile, for P3, it's all up for grabs now as well, because Sam Harris is looking ever closer than he has done before. Onto the start-finish straight they go, and across the timing line once more. Incredibly close between the two, and also incredibly close further back as well for P5 between Cianco and the fourth place man, fifth place man of Chris Pebbody. Pebbody has to defend his line, tries it up the inside, does Cianco into turn 1, but didn't quite make it stick. It didn't pay off for him at all there, unfortunately, and had to back out of the move right at the last moment. Fair play to him for trying, though. Fastest lap, or personal fastest lap for Chris Munro in P3 as well, trying to build out that gap to Sam Harris in 4th position, but not quite being able to do so because Sam Harris is matching his best pace as well, which is really interesting to see. The leading duo, though, of Thomas Zaustovich and Lee Whitney. Lee Whitney trying to think about where he can find a way past Thomas Zaustovich. We're already 6 minutes into this final. Very, very exciting it is out on track, though, for this super heavy one. Oh, my goodness me, as Chris Munro looks up the inside of Sam Harris, and Harris manages to get the position down, but he's not got the drive onto the straight at all, and around the outside goes Chris Munro. Munro manages to hold it, does he? Yes, he does. Beautiful move there from Chris Munro in the super heavy category. He moves himself back up into P3. These two fighting for the final podium spot on the rostrum for the final. If one of them gets onto there, we'll be chatting to either of them and finding out exactly what that overtake was all about, that's for sure. Very, very exciting, but Thomas Zaustovich still leading the way from Lee Whitney by just a couple of tenths of a second. They've been absolutely inseparable out on circuits, although this time around the gap has increased ever so slightly as well, so perhaps Lee Whitney made a slightly uncharacteristic error or something along the lines of that. But P3, Chris Munro holding on very nicely, still ahead of Sam Harris at the moment, but Harris looking to try and find a way through into the hairpin of turn 9. No way through for him there at all. Into the left-hander of turn 10. Oh, chops his nose off the last minute as Chris Munro. He's looking great guns out there on circuit so far. And then there's a battle for 5th place between Chris Pebbody and Blake Cianco to think about. And also around the outside looks to be Richard Newton versus Robert Pertak. That's an incredibly close race between the two. They're side by side into the penultimate couple of corners. Who's it going to be that's going to reign on top? Will it be Pertak or will it be Richard Newton. Newton on the outside, Pertak on the inside as they come across the line. It is going to be Pertak who holds on to 7th place for the time being. Incredibly close racing. Don't forget that Richard Newton, of course, is holding on in the super heavy category as well. He'll finish 2nd in class for that being the only other super heavy runner this weekend. But nonetheless, a valiant effort both drivers are putting in. But Zaustovic out in front in the lead of this race, still trying to build that deficit, build that gap up to Lee Whitney, I should say. Meanwhile, Lee Whitney trying to close the deficit down. Chris Munro holding on very nicely in P3 though. Great defensive driving, not allowing a hint of a nose up the inside from Sam Harris or anything along the lines of that, which is great to see. And both of them lapping within very broadly similar lap times as well. Sam Harris was a 58.7 last time around, and Chris Munro was a 58.5 as well. So just a couple of tenths of a second separating them as they came across the line. Both now setting 58 flat lap times as well, which is very, very impressive indeed. But Thomas Zaustovic with a 57.247 in the lead of this race. Still trying to not succumb to the pressure of Lee Whitney, but Whitney not quite close enough. It's the battle for 3rd position as the closest one on track at the moment between Chris Munro and Sam Harris. Sam Harris trying to find a way through. Chris Munro goes into the right-hander ahead, and Sam Harris manages to hold it on. He's got a good line though. He's got a good run as they go cascading down the hill through the S's. He's on the outside line. Will he manage to get the inside chop for the next corner? No, he won't. So has to hold on again. Fight again another day. Does Sam Harris once again. Incredibly close racing between these two drivers of Chris Munro and Sam Harris, looking into turn 10 and then into the penultimate corner of turn 11. We've seen so many last-minute overtakes taking place within the Daytona DMAX Championship here this weekend, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to the last corner of the last lap. Meanwhile, further down the order, Richard Newton and Robert Pertak still going hammer and tongs. Still Pertak ahead of Newton for P7 at the moment, holding on very nicely so far. Lee Whitney with the fastest lap time overall in this race last time around. Meanwhile, P5, Lacey-Yanko now ahead of Chris Peverty. Peverty tries to find it back though as they go in towards turn 3 at the far end of the circuit. Will he try and find his way through? He's got the line though in towards turn 4. Will he get the run down the hill? Yes, he will. He forces Lacey-Yanko out wide and manages to get himself back up into the top 5 for Chris Peverty. He'll be very happy with that if he can stay there throughout the course of this race. Meanwhile, back out to the lead of this race as well. It's still going on between Thomas Zaustovic and Lee Whitney. Just a couple more laps for these guys to contend with. They'll have one more after this one. Let's wait and see how things go as they come across the timing line once again. Lee Whitney gesticulates with his arm in the air. He's not very impressed at all with the action that's taking place with Thomas Zaustovic. Lee Whitney not too happy with what's happening because he wants to be out in front. He wants to be in Thomas Zaustovic's position, but Zaustovic's pace, he just can't keep up at all at the moment. Can Lee Whitney. Incredibly close between them, and of course there's no advantage with weight in these cars because they're all spec'd to a minimum weight limit, which is the most important thing. They all have to comply to the minimum 90 kilogram weight limit here in the heavy class, of course. And Zaustovic looking very comfortable and calm out there on track. Keep an eye out also for the 3rd place battle of Chris Munro and Sam Harris as well, because Chris Munro still soaking up the pressure from Harris. Down the hill and into the left-hander we go. No way through there for Harris at the moment as they come sweeping through the left-hander. Still in the lead of this race is Thomas Zaustovic. We wait for the last lap board to be displayed. There it is, it's out and it's ready. So across the timing line for the final time they go. It's going to be Zaustovic who leads the way from Whitney. One more lap for Whitney to try and make history. Meanwhile, 3rd place is up for grabs. Munro between Harris. Harris on the outside into the final corner. Tries to get the switch back. Here comes the 3rd place man though of Munro. He manages to hold on into the first corner, incredibly close between the two, but here comes Harris. They're going to be side by side into turn 3 nearly. No, he has to back out of it at the last minute to Sam Harris. Will he try and find a way through into the next corner, into turn 4? He can't quite get the exit through there. It's incredibly close for the final podium position on the rostrum here at the TW Steel Daytona DMAX 2016 Championship at Tamworth. My goodness me, it's going to be very, very close for that final podium position, but it looks like the race victory is just about going to go the way of Thomas Zaustovic. Just a few more corners for the Polish driver to negotiate, and separating him from victory into turn 11 and then into turn 12 goes Thomas Zaustovic. It's going to be 4 out of 4 victories today for the Polish driver. 2 arms in the air. He is very, very happy. Thomas Zaustovic takes the checkered flag ahead of Lee Whitney. A valiant effort from Lee Whitney, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately. And into the final corner, it's going to be Chris Munro, who's surely going to get the podium. Yes, he will. It's a podium for Chris Munro, and he's on top in the super heavy category as well. Sam Harris has to settle for 4th position in that race, and 5th place, Chris Peverty managed to get himself ahead of Lacey-Yanko on that last lap. Chris Peverty into P5, Lacey-Yanko down into P6 as well. And Robert Pertack, meanwhile, managed to get the better of Richard Newton as well in P7. So Robert Pertack in P7, Richard Newton in P8, and the final classified runner on the grid. But what a hugely exciting intermediate final we've had here at the 2016 TW Steel Daytona DMAX Championship. Let's head down to the podium then, shall we, and find out how the drivers were feeling. So we're here with the podium finishers for the heavy final, and in third position and taking the victory in the super heavy class, it was Chris Munro. Chris, talk us through that race.
Hard work. Sam in front of me at the start. I knew if I was going to get past him, I had to do it very quick. I must be, I don't know what he was on the scales, but I was 112 today. So he left a slight little gap down at 4 for me, stuck it up the inside, and then literally just went defensive for the whole way round. He managed to get by me, but I thought, quick, get back again, which I managed. And then it was literally just hang on for dear life. And he pushed me so hard, and he was, every time I looked, I mean, I don't think he could get any closer. So fair play to him, but I'm glad I managed to hang on. So it's nice to get an overall podium as well as the super heavies. Wonderful, very good end to the day then. Okay. Yep, I'll be happy.
Absolutely. Let's move over to the second place finisher as well, Lee Whitney. Lee, very exciting day for you, and it was a valiant effort to try and catch up with Tom, but just didn't quite pay off in the end.
Almost got him a couple of times, yeah. It's a bit like buses, no podiums before and 2 in one day. So it's the same man. So he's doing well today, but yeah, no, good race.
Wonderful. Now let's move on to the victor then, Thomas Salcevic. Thomas, tell us about that race from your point of view then. I mean, you would just look so calm and comfortable. You've looked calm and comfortable all weekend, and it really paid off again in the final.
Yeah, definitely one of the best weekends I had. Getting back home with 2 first places, one in enduro, one in hits. It's just one of my personal bests. So yeah, couldn't be happier than that. It was an awesome race. I have to say, I wasn't expecting that. Having Chris Carter go home a bit earlier, and but yeah, Lee Whitney kept me honest, and I have to say, you know, he's a guy to watch from now on, definitely.
So that concludes a fantastic day's worth of racing here at Daytona Tamworth. Thank you ever so much for watching, and remember to book your place on the grid, visit the website or call this number for more details.